And so we found that pattern, and now that pattern we can help mitigate. Very, very exciting stuff. We're working with Wake Forest University on a number of clinical trials. We're in the middle of a clinical trial on insomnia. We are starting a clinical trial on migraines. Next comes PTSD and traumatic brain injury, including stroke. And then lastly, hypertension. So all of those will be completed by third or fourth quarter for sure of next year to this year. So this is what I have to tell you that's the most important. If you can understand that some of the things you do, say, experience, which aren't so great, are really about an imbalanced brain because of trauma mostly, and if you can understand that some of the things that are done to you is for the same reason, because of those imbalanced brains, then I think what you will understand is forgiveness. And that can change your life. So I'm going to take a few moments, and I'm going to answer any questions if I could. But you have to have a microphone, so whoever gets to the microphone, I guess, gets the question. That's what I'm told. And we got 10 minutes, so.
Yes. You were referencing trauma. So for those situations where trauma isn't involved, where the traditional way of looking at things say, oh, it's hereditary. This person had ADD. Their parents, because they go down that trail with respect to analyzing kids that seemingly have these issues going on at birth. How do you relate to that in terms of your studies? And are those people in those situations, can they be helped by what you do?
So the question is, when we do see that pattern, and when that pattern's from early onset, age onset, that's still a functional brain pattern. And for instance, when we went to the medium security prison in Nevada, what we expected to see brain patterns in a certain area that were 20 to 50% out of balance. What we were amazed at is that they were 256% out of balance, and every inmate we saw was from a trauma from birth. Either from prenatal or from the first year of life. That's as close as we can get. Every inmate we saw was written up for violence every week, most of them, but some of them just once a month. And violence in a medium security prison, by the way, is big time. None of those inmates, almost 3 years in August, none of them have been written up for violence since. None of them could do a third grade reader. All of them have passed college courses, and 2 of them have graduated from college in 3 years. Big deal. Yeah, you bet. I mean, that's a great question, but I'm telling us all that we do not have to live with that which we've been given. We are, in fact, limitless. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Basha Christ, and I work for a children's hospital, and we have a lot of children that have suffered traumatic brain injury.
Yes.
And would this help any of them? The parents are really stressed because they've been trying everything. We do the rehab, and they're doing hyperbaric now, but would this be able to help them?
Unfortunately, the FDA does not let me answer that question affirmatively. I can only say that I can balance and harmonize brainwave patterns, and because of that, certain things are mitigated. We have had 600 soldiers. Most of them have traumatic brain injury, and it's helped them dramatically. Does that mean I help traumatic brain injury? No, I don't do that, right? Because the FDA doesn't allow me to say that. However, Wake Forest University School of Medicine is going to do a study on that, and they can tell you that next year for sure, but here's what I would do. If my child had a traumatic brain injury, and my child did have certain problems, I would do anything I had to do to make that happen. Anything I had to do. I don't care what it is. Even verge of illegal, I would do it. Yeah, I need to. Oh, here we go.
Okay, how about some of us who feel like our memory isn't as good as it could be?
Memory isn't as good as it could be simply means that, well, let me tell you about the study that was done, because I love this study. So they take 23-year-olds and they do functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRIs, on them as they respond to a question on a computer screen, and they take 63-year-olds to do the same thing. And what they assumed was that the 23-year-olds would be about 3 or 4 times as fast as the 63-year-olds. And so what they see is that the 23-year-olds receive that information and they go, consider, 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 execute. The 63-year-olds receive that information and they go, consider, 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 execute. Yeah, that's called wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes we get a little confused later because we have so many network patterns, but once you get those soothed, my mother can tell you when I was a brat, when I was 6 years old, in the time of day. I mean, it is amazing what that woman does, 101, and she talks to my fiance way too much about it. But
So it can be improved with the balancing.
no, I think it can be made better than it ever was.
Oh.
Much
And
better.
Does insurance like that problem solved?
We've worked with an insurance company for some things, but we're not yet generally made insurance viable. However, if the provider is licensed as a psychologist or a caregiver of any kind, then they can give you a code to work with that, and about 60% of insurance companies will start paying for it. Give it a few years, as somebody was mentioning earlier, Kevin, I think is, it's ahead of the curve a little bit, but not because we were really entrepreneurial, just because we had a great need, and I think we'll get there. So.
Well, keep that humor going. I like it.
Yeah. 5 minutes?
May I ask my question? My name is, I don't know, is that too loud or I'm getting feedback?
No, you're good.
Good. I'm Susie Schroeder. I am a psychiatrist, and I'm actually a recovering psychiatrist because I don't quite believe in the DSM at this point. I think it went the way of the Easter Bunny. So, but because I find that there's no etiology. However, this seems to be the step that I'm looking for. I also had something, I was rear-ended in a car. Didn't hit my head, so I didn't expect that I would have a problem, and I did, serious. And it still surprises me. Then I underwent something similar, but it's different, Nexolin. Nexolin is brainwave technology as well. And that seemed to help me and recovered some of my brains, which I'm thrilled with. I would like to use this technology in the area. I'm in Newport Beach.
Yeah, and I would encourage, when you look at brain function, it's much different than looking at brain use of blood flow, brain. That's what most scans measure, or some of them measure serotonin use. So PET, CAT, fMRI, SPECT, all of those are measurements of blood flow, basically. Some of them have computer topography with it. But they're measurements of blood flow, and they can't see function necessarily very well. When you look at the standard world of EEG, so the standard world of EEG has been around for 40, 50 years almost, 50 years. So, so why is it now that we're starting to see these breakthroughs? Because of the computing technology that's underneath. That's why. We are able to look at a brain pattern in terms of the nearest thousandth of a hertz. So we're able to look at 65,000 pieces of information, like looking through a certain kind of really high-powered microscope versus a magnifying glass, right? Big difference in the world of EEG. So that's why you see here. This kid taught me that I didn't know what I'm talking about. Down syndrome, parents called, harassed me to take him as a client. I said no. Why? Egg, sperm, meat, boom, you got a chromosomal mismatch. How could I possibly have any effect with this kid? It's not that I don't want to work with him. How could I do that? I don't understand. And that's the correct summation. I don't understand. Elmer couldn't sleep at night. He couldn't dress himself. He couldn't toilet himself. He could not engage in self-play of any kind, and he could not carry out any task. He was loving and positive, but he couldn't do any of those things. So the first session, when I saw him, we had some trouble holding him sort of in the chair. His mother and sister helped me. His father and grandfather were all there. It was like a community project. And, you know, I was a little nervous, actually. You're putting a geek on the spot here. I told you it wasn't supposed to work. But sure enough, when we saw Elmer's patterns, I thought, gee, they look like pretty incredible imbalance. So bring him back tomorrow, and we'll treat him tonight to teach him to leave a band on his head, and then I'll put that band over the sensors, right? You know how that goes sometimes. So we did that, and the next day he came back, and the next day I saw brain patterns start to actually change. The third day I saw brain patterns start to change a lot, and I said, you know, I think there's hope here. And then Elmer got up from the chair, not having spoken in his life. He hugged me and he said, "Thank you, Lee." There was not a dry eye in that room, including me, okay? Because I realized that I didn't know anything and that we are, in fact, limitless. He is now playing basketball. He's working to take Meals on Wheels to the aged, folks, okay? He works with somebody that's non-ambulatory that drives the car, and he delivers the meals to the door. He's wonderful. He's had about 40 of our 50 of our sessions, and he's wonderful. And thank you. You are wonderful too.